بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. In this video, I want to talk about an interesting issue, which I don't know if uh, you know people have talked about before, and that is the issue of the eventual dominance of a minority. Right now, what happens is the minority in any country has to be preserved and protected, and if it is not, right, and this has happened in the countries that I've lived in, well, a few of the countries I've lived in, it has happened in the US also. So a minority in any country tends to protect itself, right? And this is in the hadith also, that minorities are really important. So in a way, they are the weaker sector of the society, like not weak in terms of like uh, physically, but in terms of their strength, right? They're weak, and they're usually um, they feel like they're under threat or under pressure because they do not follow the majority, right? So so minorities tend to protect themselves, and they become more uh, more practicing. They would practice their culture more. They get attached to their culture more, like it happens in the US. The Muslims as a minority over here, they give more importance to their religion than they would do in a Muslim majority country. So you see a lot of Muslims doing things over here that you don't see Muslims in majority countries. Like, for example, the Islamic schools over here are very good, and I haven't seen Islamic schools like these in the Muslim countries. So, so this happens, and what happens is the minority always tries to find a way. Now, what does Islam says about minority, right? There are several hadith or narrations about this, that the minority has to be protected. Locally, also, the Prophet ﷺ said that you are provided because of the weak people in your family. Like, for example, if there is any disabled person, anyone is not working because of some reason, uh, and and those people who are weak in your family, they have obviously allocated providence in their destiny, right? And you are provided because of them, right? So this happens at a global scale also, and at the national scale also, that the minority actually becomes the reason a nation is given dominance in the world, right? Or a nation becomes progressive. So now, so we have to be, any nation that does not give importance to minority eventually collapses, or eventually becomes weak, right? And so there are several countries, like there are examples. I don't want to name any country, but if you look around and look at countries that protect minority, they appear to be, they have the barakah. They are they're economically stronger. And so what happens is that if you don't support the minority becomes defensive, right? And they start. So this is what I call the algorithm of the minority domination, right? They start, obviously they struggle. They're hardworking because they feel that they're under threat, right? And this is happening, for example, in India, for example. Muslims are a minority over there, right? So over there, Muslims are supporting a secular system, because a secular system is more supportive for them, because if they think that if the religious people become, the Hindus become dominant over there, the Muslims are under threat. And the thing about Hindus and Muslims, this happens everywhere. Like anywhere there is a majority and a minority, the minority and the majority does not protect the minority. The minority wants to decouple the majority from their religion or from their traditions that is threatening the minority. And this has happened historically with the Jews. The Jews have been under threat from different cultures, like especially the Christian religion, right? So they eventually, they the same reason that Muslims want a secular India, right? Because they're a minority over there, is the same reason we are, we saw Jews decoupled. They want to decouple religion from the world because everyone else's religion is a threat to them, because they're going to stay a minority of the world, right? So the same algorithm that minorities use to dominate a country, they want to use that algorithm to dominate the world, which makes sense. They're under threat, right? How do you control this? Is to take extra care of the minority, because the minority, when it comes under threat, it's gonna try to sink into the system, blend into the system, absorb into the system, and then try to dominate the system by holding powerful positions in the system. But eventually, what happens is that the minority becomes the majority. They develop the psychology of the powerful once they get into the system, and so the cycle continues, right? So the only way to break this cycle is to be extra careful with minority. And like Umar radiallahu anh, for example, he once saw a Jew begging in a city like probably Medina or Mecca. So he, because of that, he allocated a special fund for the older non-Muslims, right? So he was extra careful with what is going on with the minorities in the Muslim world. And so this is what we're seeing. Netanyahu, for example, he said that we want a secular Arab world, because if we have a religious Arab world, that is a threat to us, right? There's a video in which he is explicitly saying that. And so the Jews have eventually, even in the U.S., they have blended into the system. Every powerful position, almost every powerful position is, well, most of the powerful positions are held by Jews or people who are, funded by the Jews, right? And so I'm not saying anything about the Jews. I'm against, obviously, Israel's occupation of Gaza, but this is something that we have to address as Muslims, and we have to understand as Muslims that the minority control. They're weak, but they control the dynamics. They eventually control the dynamics of how countries run, and so we have to be very careful. And the minorities in Pakistan also, for example, are under threat, and eventually you see that effect over there. Also, the minorities over there, for example, the Shia, right? Our Muslim brothers, they were under threat for a long time, and now they are in a lot of powerful positions, right? Because we have the Pakistani society was very aggressive with them, right? And similarly, the Qadianis also, although we consider them as non-Muslims, but they were obviously persecuted. Every time you persecute a minority, they're going to get stronger. They're going to use this algorithm, and they are going to make sure that the majority's religion or their values does not come into the system. They're going to struggle for a secular system, and they're going to eventually define what is the future of the system going to be. Like the Jews are now defining the future of the world. So now, how do we address this? Right? It's a complicated situation. Once you place a minority under threat, they are given by the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's how the system works, right? When Muslims, if you look at the history of the Muslims, there were instances when minorities were under threat, and the whole system collapsed. There are different instances in the history where I've listened to different scholars, but the root of this obviously is in the hadith. The principle is in the hadith. So we should think about these matters. These are very sensitive issues that we obviously think about. Think about these things. I think about these things all the time, that when we are in a minority situation like in India, we want a secular system, right? And similarly in the US, we also don't want a system that is going to eventually place our children and our progeny in danger, right? And so this is like a survival instinct that the minority develops. And so I'll let you think more about this. It's an interesting point, and we as Muslims should think about these matters also. Jazakallah for watching. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.